More than 3,285 individuals contact us with people claiming to have been victimized by Sean Combs.
Get in here, guys, because the FBI just exposed some sickening footage proving that some of the kids who ended up being taken advantage of by Diddy were literally sold to him by their parents. Just when you think this Diddy case can't get any worse, the FBI reveals new bone-chilling details that make everyone sick to their stomachs. In case why all missed it, the internet has been on fire since Texas-based attorney Tony Buzbee held an explosive press conference where he shared the details of some of the cases his firm is now handling against Diddy. And get this, in the last 2 weeks alone, Tony Buzbee's law firm has received over 3,000 calls from alleged victims. They're only taking 120 of those cases for now, but according to Buzbee, 25 of them were below age when Diddy got to them.
The biggest secret in the entertainment industry that really wasn't a secret at all has finally been revealed to the world. The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward.
These are literal casting couch horror stories, and the worst part is that the parents of some of these kids allegedly knew what was being done to them and still allowed it to happen in the name of fame. So, let this be a trigger warning because we're about to break this down, and the details are horrifying. Tony Buzbee unleashed an Epstein-sized shockwave over Diddy about a week ago when he revealed during a press conference that his firm is representing 120 victims, each with horror stories from interactions with Diddy. And get this, those 120 victims are just a tiny fraction of the people who have come forward with their stories against Diddy. According to Buzbee, his law firm received over 3,000 calls within the span of 2 weeks, and all of them were people claiming Diddy had taken advantage of them in one way or the other. At this rate, it's not even a question of what did Diddy do, it's what didn't Diddy do. But before we break down these cases, let's meet Tony Buzbee, the lawyer handling what looks like the most horrifying case that has ever come out of Hollywood. Tony Buzbee is a Texas-based attorney who has handled similar cases against many high-profile celebrities in the past. Just this year, he handled a case involving 4 individuals filing a $50 million lawsuit against Chris Brown. The 4 people claimed that Chris Brown's associates put hands on them after one of his concerts in Texas. Buzbee's firm also represented one of the victims from the tragedy that happened during Travis Scott's Astroworld Festival in 2021. More importantly, there's the case he handled against Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson, who was accused of.
That being said, as stated, we are vetting every call that we receive. We have had to turn away some. For each, we ask for corroboration. For each, we ask for the identity of witnesses. We also have collected pictures, videos, texts. We check venues, we check dates. We want to corroborate that the claims being made have legitimacy and merit. We have on staff now a former detective from the Major Offenders Unit of Houston Police Department who is helping us vet each claim. We're using our common sense. We're being stringent because, as I said, these are not easy cases. They're very tough. The process is hard, and in some cases, the process is very lengthy. These cases are hard to prove. Many times it's the victim's word against the alleged perpetrator. Each of these victims will no doubt be publicly attacked. The day will come when we will name names other than Sean Combs, and there's a lot of names. It's a long list already. And of course, I already know who some of these individuals are, but because of the nature of this case, we're going to make damn sure that we're right before we do that. But the names that we're going to name, assuming that our investigators confirm and corroborate what we've been told, are names that will shock you. These are individual cases. There are indeed other perpetrators involved. They will be revealed when that particular individual case is ready to be filed. They already know who they are. And I'm talking here about not just the cowardly but complicit bystanders. That is, those people that we know watched this behavior occur and did nothing. And I'm talking about the people that participated, encouraged it, egged it on. They know who they are. I call them the facilitators of foul play, willing participants in vile conduct. As we identify them, each will be part of this case as defendants. These defendants will not only include individuals, but would also include corporate entities who ultimately profited off of this culture and behavior. I'm looking at banks, pharmaceutical companies, hotels. We know that many of these individuals were paid cash. We know that many of these individuals involved, whether they were the ones being or they're witnessing other people being used and then paid and told to leave. Typically paid 10 grand in cash and told to leave. And then threatened as they were leaving. So in addition to Sean Combs, you should know the defendants in these cases we're going to file will include anyone, of course, who engaged in the or exploitation, anyone who participated in such in any way, anyone who encouraged or facilitated this conduct, anyone who was in the room and watched it happen but made no effort to stop it, any venue or venue owner who was aware of what was going on but failed to stop it, any individual or entity who knew about the conduct and benefited from it but did nothing to report it or stop it, and any individual or entity who covered it up or helped cover it up. These people who know who they are should just come forward now. I would imagine, as we speak here, there are a myriad of people who are very nervous. You can't hide skeletons in the closet forever. I would expect there are many people out there right now who are desperately searching their memories as they delete their texts and data.
Sounds like these guys are out for blood. The names are going to be mind-blowing some of the biggest people in the industry, possibly including politicians and athletes too. We're talking banks, hotels, clubs, restaurants, and so many other businesses that helped Diddy and his associates get away with all the shady things they were doing. At least we know about Cassie being thrown around like a rag doll in that hotel hallway. Cassie actually described that incident in her lawsuit, and the footage played out exactly as she described it. According to Cassie, Diddy paid the hotel $50,000 to get rid of that footage, and they took the money and looked the other way until the FBI entered the chat and demanded the footage. That just tells you this case goes much deeper than any of us might ever know. According to Buzbee, the cases his law firm is handling span over 30 years. The earliest cases go as far back as 1991, and some of them are as recent as just a few years ago. Chile, do I all know what this means? It means that throughout the time Diddy was in our faces, talking about brother love, spreading love, and getting the keys to the city, he was somewhere behind the scenes wreaking havoc on hundreds of people. Remember when Diddy gave a shout out to Cassie during his Lifetime Achievement Award acceptance speech? Well, the streets are now saying that Diddy already knew at the time that Cassie was planning to sue him, and that was him sending warning shots at her to back off. Makes you wonder how many people, both victims and witnesses, Diddy had either harassed or outright taken out so they wouldn't expose him. Brace yourselves, guys, because this case just keeps getting darker. Tony Buzbee broke down the demographics of the victims his law firm is representing, and according to him, it's an equal number of men and women. Out of them, about 60% are black, 30% are white, and the remaining 10% are Hispanic and Asian. But what really had people's jaws on the floor was the ages of these alleged victims. Come to find out, the youngest was only 9 years old when Diddy got his hands on them. About 25 of them were also below the age of consent when they had that awful encounter. Now, if you're wondering how Diddy got access to so many young boys and girls, well, you're in for a world of shock. Apparently, most of these kids were lured into Diddy's trap through auditions or industry casting events where they were promised heaven and earth.
Primarily in Miami. Most of these events and incidents occurred at parties, typically after parties, or album release parties, New Year's Eve parties, 4th of July parties, something they called a puppy party, the all-white party, although several of these events occurred at auditions. Many times, especially young people wanting to break into the industry, were coerced into this type of conduct in the promise of being made a star, or in the promise of having Sean Combs listen to their tape or even let them read for Sean Combs. You should know that Some of this behavior occurred at well-known venues in New York City. Some of this behavior occurred at private residences of people that we all know. Some of this behavior occurred at hotels that we're all familiar with.
But it gets creepier. According to Buzbee, more than half of these victims usually reported to the police and went to the hospital for medical attention, but somehow the cases got lost along the way, probably due to a lack of sufficient evidence or some other reason. However, what's important is that there are official records of many of these cases where the victims either went to the hospital or filed police reports. Now, get this, when these victims went to the hospital, they usually got drug tested, and the results showed that they had insane amounts of substances in their system. One common substance they usually found in the victims' systems was horse tranquilizer. How did they end up consuming horse tranquilizers? Well, usually, at these Diddy parties, they forced unsuspecting guests to consume spiked drinks, and if the guests refused to drink, they were kicked out of the party. So, picture this: you're at an industry event that millions of people would give anything to attend. All the big names are there, and you want to make a good impression and rub shoulders with the who's who of Hollywood because you're an aspiring artist, and you need all the favors you can get from the industry gatekeepers. Of course, if they ask you to drink a weird-looking drink that your instincts tell you could be laced with something, you say yes. The next thing you know, you're waking up the next morning with all your privates hurting and no memory of what happened the previous night.
Now, although these are, in fact, individual cases, there is a common theme, an MO, if you will. Typically, the victim is lured into a situation where he or she is given a drink. Typically, that drink, reported by these victims, is apparently laced with something. Once that drink takes effect, the perpetrators perform all kinds of sexual acts on the victims, many times passing him or her around as other people watch and enjoy the show, and then leave the victim ashamed, confused, injured, and wondering what happened. When the victim reaches out, he or she is told not to say anything. Sometimes there are threats of physical violence or financial repercussions or bodily harm. The claims we intend to bring will include the following: violence, facilitated with a controlled substance, false imprisonment, compelling conduct, dissemination of video recordings.
And get this, when victims reach out to Diddy and his associates demanding an explanation for what was done to them, they are threatened with violence and forced to stay silent. Oh, and if any of the guests refuse to drink whatever they're given, they're kicked out of the party. Now, Tony Buzbee made it clear that the victims' names will be concealed to protect their identities. However, he broke down some of the cases his firm is handling, and they all follow almost the same pattern. One victim was a 22-year-old woman who attended one of Diddy's parties and got blacked out after being forced to take one of those laced drinks. He also mentioned a 9-year-old boy who went for an audition in New York City for Bad Boy Records. At the audition, there were other young boys, all trying to land a record deal. Diddy allegedly promised the boy and his parents that he was going to sign him, but instead, he left the boy with a lifetime of trauma from Diddy's inappropriate behavior. In another instance, Diddy told yet another young kid that he would make him a star, but insisted they meet in private. While can imagine how that visit went. There was also a 15-year-old girl who got flown to New York City to attend a party and ended up being drugged and assaulted by Diddy, who allegedly passed her to other men in the studio to take turns with her. Another alleged victim, who was 26 at the time, recalled being picked up by Diddy from the airport in a black SUV and given something to drink in the car. The next thing she remembered was waking up the following morning with pain and damage to her privates. Buzbee also mentioned a pregnant woman who attended a group dinner with Diddy and, despite not drinking alcohol because of her pregnancy, ended up drinking something that was spiked. She blacked out, and the next thing she remembered was waking up beside Diddy at his Miami home with severe damage to her body. Chileel, the stories just keep getting worse. The saddest part is that many of these people approached Diddy with hopes of jump-starting their music careers, but they ended up so badly bruised and traumatized that they wanted nothing to do with the industry anymore.
Blood system. I want to give you a quote from a very young man who told us over the phone about his experience and all the things that happened to him. He says allegedly at the hands of Sean Diddy Combs and his friends in the effort to try to sign a record deal. This was kind of what he was told he would have to do. His quote is, "Had he not been in power, I feel like I could have been something great. I quit the industry because of what Sean Combs did to me."
Okay. As horrific as these cases sound, it's not exactly surprising because industry insiders have been talking about Diddy's shady practices for the longest time. That whole horse tranquilizer business is something Jaguar Wright has been exposing for a hot minute now.
See.
Talk to him.
Drugs with Jaguar.
Let's talk.
Drugs education.
101.
So 2C is the cocaine, but they take the ketamine and cook it up. And they fold it into the coke. Now, if you don't know what ketamine is what they call on the street Special K. It's a veterinary horse tranquilizer. Now, gay men have been using this for years. See, back in the day, if you went to a gay party or a gay rave, there was certain you always find on hand. Viagra, ecstasy, Special K, and cocaine. Now see, the cocaine keep you up all night, but unfortunately, it gives you limp noodle because of what the blood flow is. So you wants to fuck with a half-hard dick all night. So that's why you have the Viagra to make sure that the voluntarily stays hard while you're numbing your coke. Now see, the ketamine, that's a horse tranquilizer, so that relaxes all your muscles. You can get fucked by 80 ton gorillas. You wouldn't feel a thing. So now, it's gonna stay hard. You numbed up and you high. You got the ketamine in you so you don't feel shit. And then you add the ecstasy to put in the feeling that you've now blocked out. And now you got a party.
Freak off cocktail.
Yeah. So now, the 2C, they done skipped all the steps. They condensed it.
Wow.
So you got the cocaine in there, and then you got the ketamine in there, and they say that some of the dealers add the ecstasy in there. Now the Viagra, you still got to take that solo. But with the 2C, you got all of that. The gay cocktail.
No.
Off cocktail in the one thing. And the reason why it's pink is because they put the food coloring in it. They think, he said he think they got it from the Breaking Bad. You remember how they was making the meth, and they made it a special color. So they done that with the 2C.
Wow.
It's the food coloring.
You think that...
As if you need more. When did high not get high enough? Like, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, to the point where you have to fly it across, like, I need that here tonight. Can you get that here? Like, no...
I need that here. You got powerful and food coloring.
Shit. Okay.
You are numb. You are wired. You pop that Viagra. You a f***ing machine. You anything. You a brick wall, wouldn't even feel it.
I'm sure there's footage of that.
Jaguar has also spilled the tea about how young guys in the industry get taken advantage of in the name of mentorship, and they end up so traumatized they have to run for their lives.
And young men have left their house fucking to get away from them in their mentorship. Meek Mills. Bashir Gray. Left that house screaming.
When it comes to Diddy, there are probably hundreds of young boys out there who were victimized by him just because they wanted to get signed to his record label or receive some other favor from him. However, the ones that have been making the social media rounds in the last few months are Usher and Justin Bieber. One of the recently resurfaced videos about Usher and Diddy is the one where Diddy talks about how he and 10-year-old Usher used to sleep in the same bed and fight over Frosted Flakes. It suddenly has a whole new, much darker meaning now. Way more victims are going to come forward, Will the feds release more proof of the sinister things that used to happen at Diddy's parties? Sound off in the comments section below. Music.